Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts College Football Podcast, your ticket to all things college football. Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? Join us as we talk college football, from the national championship to college rivalries to bowl games to the Heisman Trophy to which conference is the best. We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the GSMC College Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Danielle. I am back after a week, because there was no episode from Monday. So yeah, it's been a week, you guys. Oh my gosh. I'm so sorry there's no new episode on Monday for you all. My computer broke. I was drinking some coffee upstairs, literally doing work to record Monday's episode, and my sister spilled coffee all over it accidentally, so that stunk, but it's okay. We got a new computer, and we're not spilling coffee on it, I guess. But I'm so sorry for the new episode. And it was a crazy weekend in my life, people, as college football news was swirling and just all over the place, I guess you could say. I don't really have that crazy weekend in my life now that I think about it. What did I do? I really didn't do much at all. Dang. It was a boring weekend in my life, but it was not a boring weekend in college football. Oh my gosh. Something you guys might not know, I guess, or maybe you do, is I usually record the episodes for this podcast on Tuesday or Wednesday for the Thursday episode and Friday for the Monday episode, because weekends are always super hectic for me with family things and other projects in my life that I do for freelance work. So weekends are really hectic for me. So I always record this podcast on Friday so I can give it like my full attention, which does kind of sting sometimes because there are often news that comes out over the weekend that I can't really talk about. So I'm recording this on Wednesday, August 12th. Oh my gosh, it's already the middle of August. That's weird. I'm literally waiting till the last possible minute to record this because so much is going on in college football that I don't, like yesterday I was starting to plan out this podcast and I was working and I was like, you know what, like all this news is going to be irrelevant in an hour. So I just waited until like all the news came out because, as you guys may know, yeah, a lot has changed. I was going to talk about UConn canceling their season, but that is old news, people. Oh, yes, it is. So we got a great show for you guys today. It's a little bit of a depressing episode. I don't know if depressing is the right word per se, but we're not really going to be going through the rundowns like I normally do. We're not going to be looking at a conference preview. I'm also a little upset because last week I spent 4 hours previewing the Big Ten, like doing my research for that, and don't need that anymore, sounds like, at least until the spring. So filed that away. But we're not really going to do the previews of players and conferences this week because we have so much news to go over. We are going to start with the big news, the big stuff, I guess you could say. The cancellation of college football in 2 conferences, the MAC canceling their season, all that jazz. I feel like there's so much to talk about there, and I have like 20 minutes to do it, so let's get into that. But then we'll be going into the state of players' voice and the freedom that they have as a college football player, and unionizing and talking about the movements that are going on, because that is definitely something I didn't get to touch on last episode because my computer broke. And then how the heck is this all going to work out? We're going to go into the ACC, the SEC, and the Big 12 and their plans, what they're thinking. How is it going to work? And rounding it out, we kind of have a fun little top 10 this week. We got a top 10 people to go to a football game with. Cheer it up, make it not so analytical and intense for you guys with that one. So without further ado, let's get into it. So, wow. So we have the MAC, the Middle American Conference, canceled their season. This came on Saturday. The MAC pulled their plug, and shortly after, oh my gosh. So this came on the heels of UConn, Connecticut canceling their season. That shocked some people. I mean, it definitely shocked me as well because that was the first big team to do it, but also have to recognize that they were independent and they were not a part of a conference this season, and so it was more feasible that they would cancel their season because so many conferences were going conference-only play, and it just made more sense. But a Power 5 coach told ESPN that nobody wanted to be the first to do it, and now nobody will want to be the last. So speaking about the Middle American Conference, the MAC, they canceled their football season shortly after 10 a.m. Eastern on Saturday. Word leaked that the Middle American Conference presidents had voted to postpone the fall sports season, including football. Commissioner John Steinbrecher confirmed this and said it was a miserable decision and echoed many in saying, if you told me in March we weren't going to be here today, I wouldn't have believed it. Which I think is the sentiment expressed by many in this current environment. The world is crazy right now. You can look at other sports. NBA is going well, but as Ryan Russillo talked about on his podcast the other day on the Ringer Podcast Network, the NBA, they're having less teams play, not playing as many games, less players on a team versus a sport like baseball, which is definitely up in the air right now. It's still playing, but you keep hearing news about games being canceled and players testing positive, and there's just more players on the team, and they're traveling, whereas the NBA is doing a bubble. And I just think it's crazy. We live in this world where the only feasible way it looks like to have a sports season is a bubble, but then college football, how many players are on the team, the coaches, the traveling, so much goes into it. So then this led to the hashtag We Want to Play movement, which was a call to not only play college football in the fall, but do so safely while ultimately creating a college football players association, so essentially a union. The demands of the joint effort aren't numerous in length, but the push to create a college football players association representing the power conferences is massive, and this was created and advertised by Trevor Lawrence of Clemson, so the star quarterback of Clemson, one of the biggest names in college football. I'm going to read off some of the tweets he sent out. Players will all be sent home to their own communities where social distancing is highly unlikely, and medical care and expenses will be placed on the family if they were to contract COVID-19. Not only to mention the players coming back from situations that are not good for them / their future and having to go back to that. Football is a safe haven for many people, the quarterback tweeted out. And then he goes on to say that we are more likely to get the virus in everyday life than playing football. Having a season also incentivizes players to be safe and taking all of the right precautions to avoid contracting COVID because the season / teammate safety is on the line. Without the season, as we've seen already, people will not social distance or wear masks and take the proper precautions. Again, this was tweeted out by Trevor Lawrence over the weekend, and this meshed with the hashtag We Are United movement that I will touch on later in this segment. If you guys aren't aware what that is, it is a players movement, and really this kind of jump-started the whole conversation about players' safety, and there was never a question about that, but this was kind of the big players coming out and saying, no, we want to play. And there's no question that players want to play. It just comes down to safety. And players like Najee Harris, a running back for Alabama, and Justin Fields, the quarterback for Ohio State, they tweeted out their support for the movement. This all happened over the weekend. And, we kind of knew that college football was up in the air, per se. I just know, my parents were talking about it. Everyone I know was talking about it. It was definitely questioned. And then the world kind of stopped because we found out that Tuesday, so yesterday, that the Big Ten announced they would be postponing / canceling the fall 2020 season and intend to try and play in the spring. Big Ten Commissioner Kevin Warren told ESPN on Tuesday that when a conference releases its schedule only 6 days ago, he reiterated the season might not happen, a message he has been consistent with. Here is a direct quote from Warren. Because we announced a schedule does not mean we're going to play. As you gather information on a daily basis, that's what day-to-day is. We have to still plan. By organizing schedules and making announcements, we made it very clear. I thought I was very clear in that it was a day-to-day decision, and we're going to do what is best for the health and wellness of our student athletes. Here's a combination of where we are in our testing, where we are in our rapid testing. How is that contact tracely actually defined? This is something he told ESPN. There's a whole liability of issues. We have incredible policies and procedures in place in our schools. We have 14 schools in 11 states. People are doing the best they possibly can, but when you go from the assimilation period to get ready to put on pads and contact, and you look at the overall numbers during this global pandemic as far as caseloads, they have not decreased, they've gone up. Trends have not improved, they've gotten worse. You add that up, and you are getting ready to go into more formal practice. It's just not a level of not only concern, but unknown risks at large. When you're dealing with the health of human beings, it's serious. So again, this was told by Kevin Warren to ESPN, the Big Ten commissioner, and I commend the Big Ten for doing this. I never want to sound like I don't want college football, because obviously I do. We love college football, but I am also a college student, and the safety of the athletes is so important. And the school in general, I mean, I've talked about I'm not going back to Boulder in the fall because of safety concerns and not wanting to contract the virus and spread it. And it's just a whole liability. And as he said, cases are going up. You can look at states like Florida and California and Texas. I mean, like the hot spots of the coronavirus, if you will. And it's just not getting any better, which is a really scary thing to think about, that we've been in this since March. And we all thought this would be like a 2-week thing and then it'd be over, and it's not. It really stinks. So yeah, Kevin Warren, the Big Ten commissioner, he announced that, and I commend him and applaud him. So the Big Ten announced early Tuesday morning, I want to say around like 10 or 11 a.m., that they were canceling the season. And then, let's get into what some of the schools from the Big Ten have to say about this. So Nebraska's coach, Scott Froster, said on Monday that the program was prepared to look at any and all options to play this fall. He issued a joint statement Tuesday saying, "We're very disappointed in the decision by the Big Ten." However, Warren today, Wednesday morning, shut down the idea that Nebraska could play anywhere but the Big Ten, and they shut down that idea. And we have to realistically think that there is over $80 million worth of TV revenue at stake for Nebraska by canceling the season, and that's just a huge thing. I mean, you look at the money that these coaches have $5-6 million a year contracts, and you look at all the revenue and the buildings that they've built. I mean, this is a huge $4 billion industry, and so of course the schools are disappointed in the decision, but you have to think about the safety, and it's just so complicated. I mean, there's not someone who's going to be satisfied with this decision. There's not going to be someone that's going to be like, yeah, that's what I said all along. There's definitely people out there that are like, I told you so, I told you not to do this. But, I mean, no one wants to be that person that's like, I told you so. Maybe some people do, but it just stinks. I mean, that's the only way you can put it. Ohio State Athletic Director Gene Smith said he and University President Christina Johnson were in agreement to delay the start of the fall sports season instead of postponing to the spring. It is an incredibly sad day for our student athletes who have worked so hard and have been so vigilant fighting against the pandemic to get this close to their season, Smith said. My heart aches for them and their family. President-elect Johnson and I are totally aligned in our efforts to delay the start of the season rather than postpone. I am so grateful for her for all her efforts in supporting our student athletes in their traditional fall season. As an institution and as an athletic department, we have a responsibility first and foremost to the care for the health, safety, and wellness of our students and staff, and I believe we have done that successfully. Smith confirmed to ESPN that Ohio State will not look to pursue opportunities in other conferences for a fall season. So this is what Gene Smith, the athletic director, said, and there was definitely not a ton of support. I mean, there was support per se, but Justin Fields, their Heisman quarterback, and seen as a top 4 NFL draft prospect by ESPN draft analysts Mel Kiper Jr. and Todd McShay, he tweeted SMH, just SMH ... on Tuesday when this news came out, which is very justifiable because, as we will get into later in the show, there is a lot of draft draft unknowns now. There's a lot of mismatch between what's going to happen in the NFL draft. And for players like Justin Fields, this was their last season. Like, this was their chance. And it does stink because there are a lot of players that probably have worked their butt off over the course of the offseason to become a second or third round draft pick and have that opportunity at the NFL. I mean, so many of these players are just playing to get to the league, and they're just trying to be the best they can. Not everyone is a Justin Fields or a Trevor Lawrence. A lot of these players are sixth-round draft picks who just want to make it to the league and have a shot at success and support for their family and financially and to play the sport they love. And it just stinks. I mean, again, if you had told us in March we wouldn't have two of the Power 5 conferences playing, we would have said you're ludicrous. I mean, everyone would have said that. And so it's unclear how the decisions by the Big Ten and Pac-12 will impact the college football playoff. Any decisions about the structure or format of the four-team playoff are made by the College Football Board of Managers, which is comprised of 11 university presidents and chancellors, including Penn State's Eric Barron and Washington State's Kirk Schultz. And here is what college football executive director Bill Hancock told ESPN. It is too soon to say what the implications will be. We will wait for the guidelines from the College Football Player Board and a management committee. The COVID-19 pandemic has impacted every aspect of our lives, both professionally and personally. For many students and staff, it has brought anxiety and stress, and we are looking forward to a time when things start to look and feel more quote-unquote normal. This was said by Wisconsin Chancellor Rebecca Blank and Athletic Director Barry Alvarez in a joint statement. For months, we have hoped that the return of collegiate sports might be an opportunity to restore some sense of normalcy and provide brighter moments. Even so, today's decision by the Big Ten to postpone the fall 2020 sports season is the correct one. I completely agree with them. It's not going to be a popular decision. It's not the one that we want. I mean, I can look at this selfishly as a Colorado Buffalo, as a senior going into my final year of college and say, I'm not going to have football my last year of school. The reason I went to a big school at Colorado was partly for the football. And now we're not going to have that. And that stinks. I mean, I think of my friends at school. I was talking to my friend Sophie last night about this, and she was heartbroken. I mean, she loves football season. We all do. And selfishly, it just stinks. I mean, what are Saturdays going to be like now? That's the weird thing. And that's just from a selfish college student perspective. You have to think about this from the players' perspective, from the families of the players' perspectives. And this wasn't the popular decision, but it was the right one because, again, how many times can I say, think of this from a college student perspective, but a huge part of collegiate football is the tailgating beforehand. And I've said this, you're not going to stop the kids from partying. That's just the fact of it. Like, these 20-year-olds who are tailgating before games, like, that's how their virus is going to spread, and they're going to put that all over campus. And then there's going to be parties after the game the players could potentially go to and get it. And there's just so many chances for, like, outbreaks, and it just stinks. It really stinks. And so we have our President Donald Trump. He said that canceling college football would be a tragic mistake. So I also do want to say that the Pac-12 announced about an hour after the Big Ten did that they'll be canceling their football season. So we wouldn't have to cancel the college football season, and it wouldn't be considered a tragic mistake if back in March we did our part, we wore our masks, we social distance, but the thing is that we didn't, and our country is not in shambles, but I don't really want to get political on here, but yeah, it just stinks. It really stinks that we're in this position. And so here's a quote Trump told Fox News. The other thing is somebody was explaining to me, one of the great doctors. He said that these players are so powerful and strong, not lots of body fat. Perhaps you can take some offensive linemen and dispute that, but not a lot of body fat and maybe none in some cases. And they're very healthy people. People don't realize this, but a tiny percentage of people that get sick, they're old. It just attacks old people, especially old people with bad hearts, diabetes, or some kind of physical problem. That was, again, a direct quote from Donald Trump, our president, and I think that's not – I'm not a doctor. I just know what the news has told me, but the cases are rising in the 20 to 29 bracket. I can look in San Diego, and the cases have rose about 40% in that bracket demographic here, and it's like that all over the country. You see that there was, I believe, I don't want to get this wrong, but over 1 million new cases in the the under 17, or it was the young demographic age. I'm completely getting this wrong. I'm so sorry. but in Florida, there's cases are skyrocketing in new cases from the young people. And it's the young people that are spreading this virus. It's the ones that aren't staying home, that aren't social distancing. You see people going out to lakes in Florida and across the country and having parties of 20 plus people and not social distancing whatsoever. And I mean, everyone is entitled to their own decision, but it's about the safety of others at this point. And my mom brought up a good point yesterday. I was talking to her about this, and because she was kind of saying, what are you going to do if they cancel college football with the podcast and everything? You just started this. Like, where are you going to go about this? And I was just like, I'm not sure. It's just such a weird time we live in. And she was like, everyone always says, like, even if it's not for the safety of you, it's for the safety of other people. And I think we often forget that because, I mean, I'm prone to it. I'm pretty sure everyone is getting prone to this, like, selfish mindset of, like, well, it doesn't affect me, so it's okay. And, well, I personally have not contracted the coronavirus. I know people that have, and I'm not near them right now, but the way that it affects their life and people saying we physically can't go back to school right now because I saw a tweet the other day, and this is a really bad tweet, but it was, I don't know if anyone listening knows what a Juul is, but it's like an e-cigarette, and someone was like, it's amazing how passing a Juul around at one frat party will cause an outbreak at a school. And it's true. And it doesn't matter what kind of health you are in, this can affect everyone. I have a family friend who their father passed away at age 49, was in the best health of anyone I knew, got the coronavirus and passed away, so that's not necessarily true. But yeah, there's also been talks about a heart condition that is linked to COVID-19, which is myocarditis. I'm not a doctor, if you can't tell. It's inflammation of the heart muscle, typically caused by a viral infection like COVID-19. If untreated, it can cause heart damage or sudden cardiac arrest. And this heart condition that is being talked about, it's coming into risk for younger people as well, which we definitely have to keep ourselves on the lookout, not only for the players, but for coaches in general. And I think the sad reality of what's going on with all of this is that for many people, it will take a notable college football player contracting the virus and potentially dying or be put at great risk for health deficiencies the rest of their life for people to take this seriously, because you always hear this saying, it doesn't affect you until you know someone that it's affected, which is very true, because up until our family friend's dad died, I knew the virus was serious, but I had never met anyone or knew anyone that was personally affected by it, and it just stinks. I mean, you have to think about, I saw on the news yesterday that this church opened back up in California, and again, like, nothing against it. Like, at the end of the day, like, your state and your county has the right to do whatever it wants, but I mean, it's just, think about the safety of other people. We are going to live this life of social distancing and masks and caution and extreme measures for the next 6 months at least, I believe. I'm not quoting that from like a medical expert or anything, but if we can't have college football, which is something we didn't take for granted, but it's definitely, I've never been in a world where college football wasn't going to happen this season for some conferences. If we can't have college football, I mean, we're not going to have a lot of things, and I think this is really the season of realizing that, you know, life goes on, and not life goes on, but this is the season of kind of realizing that things are not going to be normal, and this is not a fun decision for anyone. I mean, you can watch the press conferences with Warren and like ADs and just like see the heartbreak in their faces, because that's how everyone feels. I was heartbroken yesterday when I found out the Pac-12 was canceled for the season, selfishly for Boulder, but also because it just stinks. I mean, college football is such a huge part of America. And say what you want about, we don't need college football, there are bigger things to worry about. There definitely are. Like, if my biggest complaint about the coronavirus pandemic in my life right now is that it took away some college football from me, and it's going to be different, I'm not going to go to games or anything, then yeah, like that, I'm pretty lucky that that's my biggest complaint about coronavirus, or that I have to live at home for the semester, because there are so many bigger fish to fry. There are so many more things to worry about with this virus, but it does stink. I mean, for people that live and breathe football like I do, this isn't a fun situation to be in, and it sucked when basketball got postponed in March and the NBA got canceled and March Madness didn't happen, and now we're taking it to football, and it's almost September, and this is still going on, and oh my gosh. Did you guys enjoy my little rant there, I guess? But it's just wild. It's a wild time we live in, honestly. And so, yeah, I mean, that was kind of going over everything, and the Pac-12 and the Big Ten, they postponed their season to the spring. What does that mean? There's so much to go over, so much to look at. And coming up, we'll be looking at player union movements, opt-outs, the future of player movements, and more. So stick around.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
And we are back, everybody. Did you enjoy that little commercial break from my voice? Yeah, so last segment was a little sad. I guess you could say it was a little depressing. It's a weird time. I never really thought we'd be canceling the Big Ten and the Pac-12. But college football isn't canceled completely, obviously, because there are 3 conferences still scheduled to play. But it's just a lot. Just a little weird. But, whew. Lost my breath there for a second. So now let's get on to our next segment, where we will be getting into opt-outs, player movements, player unionization, what this means for the future of college athletics, and all that pizzazz, I guess you could say. So if you are unfamiliar with what is going on in if you are unfamiliar with what is going on in football with regards to player union, don't worry. It's a lot to go over, so let's kind of get into it. But about a week and a half ago, hashtag Big Ten United, which was formed by a group of Big Ten players who released a statement from the College Athletics United. It stands for over 1,000 concerned Big Ten players. They acknowledge that they appreciate the work the Big Ten is doing to try and prepare for the season, but it is simply not enough. Here's a direct statement from the Players Tribune. While we appreciate the Big Ten's recently announced plan for the upcoming season, we believe that the conference proposal falls short in certain areas. Given that the players are the primary stakeholders in the business of college sports, we believe that any course of action moving forward needs to include player input. We are deeply disappointed with the lack of leadership demonstrated by the NCAA with respect to player safety during the COVID-19 pandemic. We believe the NCAA must, on its own and through collaboration with the conference, devise a comprehensive plan to ensure the safety and well-being of players leading up to and during the upcoming fall season. This is an excerpt from the Players Tribune article where they announced the hashtag We Are United movement, which came on the heels of the We Are United movement. This is the big hashtag Big Ten United. So hashtag We Are United, which is a movement started by the Pac-12 players, basically showcases their concerns for health and safety as well as inequality going on in college football. They demand that they are seen as more than an amateur, which I think is not much to ask. And it gets into a lot of questions that football has definitely faced over the last however many years that since player movement and since player empowerment has kind of come along. We've seen this in other sports. We've seen this in the workforce in general. This is all over. I think that people are starting to advocate more for themselves, and that's definitely coming into college football. But the hashtag We Are United movement just really, really showcased that voice. They have a say, and it's not right to So yeah, there's definitely just uncertainty, but let's get into if you need a refresher, what the New York Times published a piece dealing with the uncertainty of the season for Pac-12 players. This is, of course, before they announced that they would be opting out of the fall season, and it touched on inadequate transparency about the health risks, the lack of uniform safety measures, and an absence of ample safety measures. The people who are deciding whether we're going to play football are going to prioritize money over health and safety 10 times out of 10. This is by Jaden Grant. He was a senior defensive back at Oregon State. And they also touched on how they need to put the millions of dollars that the programs have, instead of into different buildings and everything, into more address social, economic, and racial inequalities, which I think is not a lot to ask. I mean, obviously it's much more complicated than that, but there's definitely just a lot of build-up and tension within college football about these players and their rights and what they deserve. Excuse me, I'm so exhausted for some reason. So this came on the league. I don't know what I'm saying. This came on the news that the Ivy League had shut down, but sports until January 1st. So again, if you need a refresher, the Big Ten United goes on the heels of the We Are United movement, and that kind of got into more college football talk. And the NCAA, which is known for its zeal, recognition, and enforcement, has had ample time to prepare for the safe return of athletes to competition, yet it has done nothing. Its laissez-faire approach to forcing each conference and each school to create its own plan, resulting in inconsistent policies, procedures, and protocols. This was, again, an excerpt from the Players Tribune article. And it was good on the Big Ten players for doing this. Like I said with the Pac-12 time, the Pac-12 players speaking up was only the beginning, and we will see this from other athletes. It'll translate into other amateur sports. I'm not positive, but I'm sure that when college basketball comes back, we will hear about this from college basketball players and what they think. And this translates over into other areas schools need to prioritize before reopening in a few weeks. So this is So as previously mentioned, schools are going to have to do a lot when it comes to the reopening of campuses around the United States. There's no question about that. It's definitely a tricky subject for a lot. And the Pac-12 players speaking out was only the beginning, and we will definitely see this from other athletes. I think it was good on college football players for knowing their platform, knowing the position they have in college football. And as we saw with the Big 12 announcement, players have a voice, and their voice matters. This is not something we can just let go and push under the rug, because players' voices are so incredibly important, and I feel like many of us often look at them as just amateur athletes who don't really have much of a voice or a say when it comes to college athletics, and that's not the case whatsoever. But it was just a matter of time, especially given everything going on with the Black Lives Matter movement in recent months. It was just a matter of time before players spoke out about their rights and their safety, and this truly will change college football forever, I believe. There's no question about that. I think that players are discovering that their voice matters and that they have something to say, and they can't just push it onto the rug. And speaking of which, let's get into another story that I never got to touch on because, again, my computer broke and I couldn't record last week. But let's get on to the Colorado State investigation that is going on in the nation right now, if you will. So if you guys don't know, Colorado State, CSU, is located in Fort Collins, Colorado. Colorado is definitely not a hotspot for coronavirus, but it's not. I mean, I'm personally thinking of just Boulder in general and how unsafe it is there, in my personal opinion. But Myron Metcalf of ESPN reported last Tuesday that Colorado State University was under investigations over COVID-19 precautions. So Joyce McConnell, the president of Colorado State University, said Tuesday that she was launching an immediate and objective investigation into the athletic department following allegations that student athletes had been intimidated and threatened as leaders sought to disregard COVID-19 protocols. So players, coaches, and sports medicine staff at Colorado State University told ESPN that athletic department leaders are discouraging athletes from being tested for COVID-19. They are failing to provide accurate information to local and state health officials and are ignoring guidelines to quarantine athletes who might be exposed. Football players at Colorado State University have also been told that their playing time will be affected by a positive test and extended absence due to contracting the virus. So let's start there. That's unacceptable. flat out, that's unacceptable. This virus is not a cold. This is not a stomach flu. Many people can say, oh, it feels like the cold. It doesn't for many people, and it is flat out unacceptable that a school and a football program is willing to risk the health and safety of their players just to keep their TV revenue and make money. Obviously, this is an industry. This is a money-making industry, but we are using amateur athletes, and if you can't respect the health and safety of your own athletes, that's unacceptable. And Rams coach Steve Addazio issued a statement last Tuesday, saying that the program had developed a comprehensive COVID-19 prevention plan in collaboration with the university's pandemic preparedness team, which includes a specific, strictly enforced process and procedures to build and maintain a culture of safety, compliance, and responsibility to all members of the football program and the community. The health and welfare of our student athletes on the Colorado State football team is our top priority, and I fully support President McConnell's investigation into concerns about whether these protocols were properly followed by everyone involved in the program. We want every student athlete to have the confidence that we are taking every possible measure to ensure their safety, and will continue working with the training staff, the athletic department, and the university to evaluate and implement any additional steps necessary to live up to our highest standards. Now, of course, this comes before the Mountain West announced on Monday that they will not be playing college football in the fall, which means the CSU Rams will not be playing college football either. So, yeah, there's still an investigation ongoing with the school about what is going on. They were told to hide symptoms because they couldn't afford it. They couldn't afford it monetarily, financially, for their own image. I think that any school that has an outbreak, I don't know if it's embarrassing per se, but it's definitely in the news and highlighted, and the news, all we're talking about is coronavirus, and so the last thing a school wants is to have a giant outbreak and have that be on the news. And some players at Colorado State University felt compelled to minimize their symptoms, according to several people within the program. One source says a player who had a severe cough and eventually tested positive continued to work out. Another source said a player with symptoms who subsequently tested positive was scared to mention that to the coaching staff and medical staff. So despite several players denying these claims on Twitter, this is not the school it's only happening at. I mean, CSU is not playing football in the fall, which, I mean, now I guess their concerns are kind of gone per se, and they can focus on getting better and preparing for the spring season. But just think about it. If a small school like CSU is having this happen there, then what does this mean for bigger schools? I mean, I don't have any insider information, but I think it would be naive to think that a big school like Alabama or LSU isn't telling their players to hide symptoms. That, again, that's completely naive. That's completely skeptical. I have no proof of that whatsoever. That's literally what I'm thinking. And you just have to think about that in that perspective. A small school like CSU, who has a few $1 million at stake, versus a big school like Alabama that has hundreds of $1 million at stake on the football season, it's a lot. And I think it's very real to think about the monetary aspect of this. And are other schools hiding the case? There's most likely, and this is not going to be the last time we hear these kinds of stories. I think that when this current season is over, regardless of how it goes, we're going to hear stories about coaches and staff and different organizations telling their players to hide the virus. And again, that's not news. I'm not confirming anything. This is literally speculation. I have no sources whatsoever. And going along with, there aren't going to be fans at games or anything. It's just a weird season. And so we want to play movement, as mentioned above by Trevor Lawrence. What does this mean for the future of player movements in college football? Let's get back to that. So can we have unions in college football? Can we unionize and give the players a voice? It's definitely difficult because they are unpaid right now. And this gets into the age-old question of should we pay college athletes? But having a labor union means that we see these athletes as more than amateurs, more as unpaid interns, essentially. And is that something the NCAA is willing to do? Are they willing to say, you are not an amateur athlete, you have a union, you have a right to your voice? And I think that when we get into that, we get into, the question of should we pay college athletes? What should we do? And it's a lot. It's questionable. But again, it's not something we can ignore, and we really should not ignore it. But yes, there's a lot of player movement going on in the college football landscape right now, which is something we will continue to touch on for the next few weeks. And I also want you guys to send in anything you want me to touch on in these next few weeks as we gear up. I mean, obviously there's going to be a lot to talk on with the Big 10, Big 12, the Big 12, the ACC, and the SEC, but I don't want this to all be, well, what conferences aren't playing and everything. I do want to talk about college football again and get back, because I feel like right now I'm just touching on news and touching on my opinion of the news. I'm not really giving I'm giving factual information, but I want to get back to being an analyst and examining all that. So let me know what you guys want to hear in the upcoming weeks about these players, big player movements and everything. Let me know what you think. Do you think it's fair that we're not letting these players unionize? I think these movements like the hashtag Big Ten United and the hashtag We Are United it's a start, but it's not the end. And I think in the coming years, we will see a lot more of this. So with that being said, stay tuned, everybody, because coming up, we are going to look at the Big 12, ACC, and SEC. How the heck will all this work? So stay tuned.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
And we are back, everybody. Hope you enjoyed a break from my voice there for a minute. Let's get into our third segment of the day before we kind of hop into a fun little top 10. So I feel like this episode is a little more depressing than normal just because the college football is up in the air, if we're being honest. Again, right now, the Big 12, ACC, and SEC are committed to playing, which we'll get into, but there's definitely uncertainty there on if it's going to happen, how the season's going to go out, what the heck is going on with college football, I guess. Just a lot of uncertain times, a lot of scariness, and it just makes me sad, honestly, but it's okay. Life goes on, if you will. And again, there are bigger things to worry about in the world right now than college football. This is just my job. So I'm an intern as a college football show host, and it is my job to talk about college football, and I love it. And it just makes me sad that who knows how the season's going to go. We're obviously going to have things to talk about, looking like it, but let's hope and pray, I guess. So we are back. Let's get into it. We're beating around the bush. What do I think about the Big Ten? I mean, not Big Ten. I keep messing that up. Oh my gosh. The Big 12, ACC, and SEC continuing to play. So what do I think about this? I have a lot of thoughts. I think I would be naive to say I have no thoughts. But for starters, I think that I just feel like I don't know what the medical experts of the Big Ten and the Pac-12 found that medical experts of these conferences won't. I think we're naive to say that these areas where the schools are being played are definitely not hot spots. I can just think of Florida and Texas as like two massive hot spots for the coronavirus, and I think the culture surrounding these football schools is a lot different than it is in the Pac-12, because I was listening to Ryan Russillo's podcast the other day and just talking about the atmosphere of an Alabama LSU game. Football is life at these schools. I mean, Texas, I know so many Texas Longhorns and like UT, people who go to UT where they live, breathe, and eat college football, and that's how Alabama is. I know so many people who have literally transferred to the University of Alabama for football. I know I almost went there just because of football. And I don't know what the medical experts of these three conferences are seeing that like makes it safer to play college football than the experts of the Big Ten and the Pac-12. Obviously, each conference, each team has their own medical staff and everything, but it just boggles my mind, I guess. Obviously, each conference is its own, and I'm not saying that like these teams are being stupid by playing whatsoever. They're committed to playing right now, but I think the odds that something is shaken up within the season is very big and very real. And we want college football. That's an obvious. I feel like I'm sounding on here like we don't want college football. I definitely have been told that, but that's not the case whatsoever. I do want college football to happen. I am also just very realistic when it comes to this virus and the safety of our country right now as it is. I don't know if playing football is the safest, and you can listen to the arguments that the players are making about how it's safer for them to play college football than be in some of the environments they were in. And, I mean, if they're playing football, they're more likely to want to social distance and everything, but that's not the case necessarily for everybody. We can hope it is, and we can hope that these players take responsibility and do what they need to do to protect the safety of the kids on their campus as well as their team and the other teams they're playing. But at the end of the day, I mean, not real. Like, they're still the 18 to 22-year-olds. I mean, they're going to make mistakes. They're going to do stupid things. I mean, I can look at kids who go to Boulder that I know personally that are not making smart decisions whatsoever when it comes to social distancing and the pandemic, and it's definitely affecting them in our entire school, and the odds of us going online within the first month seem very likely right now. So there's a lot of that, I guess, and I know this comes down to money and the TV money and the revenue and everything that goes into college football. As I've touched on, this is a $4 billion industry, and I mean, you can look at Nebraska, who makes $89.6 million from TV money every single year. There's so much money that goes into it, and so these teams don't want to lose that revenue. And that's very justifiable. I've not done the math yet, but I would assume that the revenue lost from the Pac-12 and the Big Ten this season is astronomical. And for teams like USC and Penn State and Ohio State, I mean, so much of the revenue relies on that, especially in a small town. I mean, I can look at South Bend, Indiana, where Notre Dame plays, and I mean, really, football season is like their season. Like, so many people that live in that town, that's when they make most of their money, is profiting off the football teams. And you can look at Boulder, and like the high season in Boulder is college football season. The hotels all sell out during college football season. Restaurants and bars are always packed during college football season. It definitely is still crowded during the year, but it dies down. And so this is also a local issue about the economy of the town your team is stationed in and plays in. But this is financial. I mean, that's why they're still playing. I think we'd be naive not to think about that they are still playing because of the money at stake. And we obviously want college football, but we also have to realize that that is the case. And from my perspective, it feels as though they aren't putting the safety of these kids first. I don't mean to be political with that. I don't mean to offend anyone listening, but that's truly what I feel. I know if I was in their position, I would want to play as well. If I had a chance to be drafted in the first or second round in the NFL and make millions of dollars doing that, this is like your one shot for some of them at a career. And it just stinks that it's being taken away from them. But their safety and health at the end of the day is what matters most. But this is a business. I have to remember that. I often get emotional or just sidetracked thinking about that, and I just get preoccupied with, well, these are athletes as well. These are students. Why aren't we giving them the same rights? And why are we treating them like businessmen when they're also amateurs? This is a business, and the NCAA is a $1 billion industry, especially college football. It is so lucrative, and it just stinks. But as we talked about in the last segment, there are more players it is more than players being amateurs, and this time period of COVID has made us realize that. I think COVID-19 has made us realize for all college athletes that they are not just athletes that represent their school. They are a moneymaker for the school, and especially big schools like Alabama, LSU, Ohio State, Clemson. I mean, these players really are like the cream of the crop, and for big name schools like that, they draw in so much revenue, and it would be naive to think that, well, the reason they want to play is just because they love football so much. No, there is a business that goes into it. And you would know, like, just looking at the deliberations the Pac-12 and Big Ten have made over the last few weeks, that's very obvious, and people shouldn't realize that. And if you don't, then you're naive. That's just naive of you. And it just stinks. When I was younger, I didn't want to believe that these players weren't being compensated in the way they were. I always thought they should be paid, but I always thought as well that they love their sport so much, which they do. There's no denying that, but it just stinks. And so this morning, we woke up to news of the Big 12 revealing their schedule. They're moving ahead with their preceded schedule for their season. So they will have a 10-game season, 9 normal games, and 1 non-conference game. So kind of getting some more looking at the season, looking ahead. We've kind of gone over the pandemic and the coronavirus and canceling everything. And now we have to move forward and we have to realize what the heck is going to happen with college football this season. How is the playoffs going to work? How are safety measures going to work? And so we will have 10 season games, 9 normal games, and 1 non-conference game. This conference schedule starts September 26th, and all non-conference games need to be played before that. So I'm pretty sure the reason they're doing this is to ensure that just like their conference, I mean, they'll really only be seeing each other until the non-conference games. They want to get out of the way in case of a coronavirus outbreak that happens from that. And so the Big 12 also announced that they will enhance COVID-19 testing, including 3 coronavirus tests per week, and return to play protocols following positive tests. EKGs, troponin blood tests, echocardiogram, cardiac MRI, those will be implemented as well. So that's good that they're using safety, I guess. That's good that they are making it feel like a little safer than it could be to return to college football. I don't know. I mean, if I was in their position, I don't know if I would view getting an echocardiogram test as like the definition of safety. But hey, it's them. I'm not in their position whatsoever. I'm not a college football player. And the Big 12 was the last Power 5 conference to release its start date, but precedes the SEC in releasing their schedule. So the SEC has not released their schedule. They are one of the 3 Power 5 conferences set to play in 2020 that does not have a schedule out. Though it details the opponents it would play last week. So the ACC released their schedule a few weeks ago, as we saw with Notre Dame on there as well. The Big 12 just released their schedule, and the SEC is set to release their schedule in the next coming days. So the ACC, the other remaining Power 5 conference, pushing on playing fall football amid the COVID-19 pandemic, will begin its 11-game season 2 weeks earlier than the Big 12 on September 7th through September 12th. So they are not going to be doing, I'm pretty sure they have 1 non-conference game, I'm pretty sure. And Big 12 Commissioner Bob Bosley has warned that there will be a possible disruptions because of the virus, and that if they need to pull the plug on the season, they will. I think that's like a precaution that everyone is taking. I mean, schools are taking that with their academics. And basically the same goes from the ACC. So let's read a statement that the ACC released. This is a statement from the Athletic Coast Conference. The ACC will continue to make decisions based on medical advice, inclusive of our medical advisory group, local and state health guidelines, and do so in a way that appropriately coincides with our university's academic missions. The safety of our students, staff, and overall campus communities has always been our top priority, and we are pleased with the protocols being administered on our 15 campuses. We will continue to follow our process that has been in place for months and has served us well. We understand the need to stay flexible and be prepared to adjust as medical information and the landscape evolves. So, they're going to continue playing until medical experts advise them that they don't. I think that's a given. That's a given for literally everyone right now. Until medical experts say no, we're going to push forward because we want life to return to as normal as possible. And there is nothing wrong with that. Sorry guys, my Fitbit is beeping and being so irritating. Does anyone else have a Fitbit? Because mine does this thing where it's like you have to get a certain amount of steps in per hour to have like 9 active hours. And it's very stressful, I have to say. I don't enjoy it. I love my Fitbit, but don't enjoy being told I have to walk 250 steps every single hour when I sit here for 90 minutes straight. I don't get any steps in. But yes, so the ACC, they're going to continue until medical experts say they don't. I'm glad they made the safety of their students a concern, because we also have to realize these are universities with kids on the campus, and I do believe that the football players will try to be as smart as possible when it comes to social distancing, taking safety measures and precautions. But, I mean, like, I'm going to think of Boulder here, and I'm sorry, I feel like I've broken cycle when it comes to this, but the campuses can do all they want to stop the virus. It's going to spread at the parties. It's going to spread at kids going to each other's houses. It's not going to be a safe environment to be in for many people, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think if you're not thinking about that, then you are naive, but the partying is what's going to cause the spread. It's not going to be wearing masks on campus. It's not going to be sitting near each other in classes. I'm not even sure if Boulder is going to require you to wear a mask in class. How is that going to go? I'm curious. Gosh, I went to the doctor a few weeks ago. Sorry, little side note here. I went to the doctor a few weeks ago, and I had a mask on the whole time, obviously, for, like, social distancing measures and, like, health and safety, but it was so weird. I always was like, okay, like, I just wanted to take it off the whole time, because I'm so used to wearing a mask now, but when I was at the doctor for some reason, I was like, well, this isn't a place I wear a mask, and that's how I feel like I would be if I was on campus. Like, obviously, I wear it walking around places, but when I go and sit down inside a classroom, like, what's that like? And, sorry, where was I? I completely lost my train of thought there, but yeah, I think kids are going to party. That's the end of the story. And let's get on to the SEC statement from Commissioner Greg Sankey. He said, I look forward to learning more about the factors that led the Big Ten and Pac-12 leadership to take these actions today. I remain comfortable with our thorough and deliberate approach that the SEC and our 14 members are taking to support a healthy environment for our student athletes. We will continue to further refine our policies and protocols for a safe return to sports as we monitor developments around COVID-19 and a continued effort to support, educate, and care for our student athletes every single day. Again, that's a statement from Greg Sankey, the commissioner of the SEC. It's basically the same thing the SEC is saying. I thought it was a little curious that he said he looks forward to learning more about the factors that led to the Big 12 and Pac-12 leadership, because obviously there are different conferences, but I feel like they should be getting the same medical information that the other conferences are getting, and so it confuses me a little in that regard, because if we are one conference, why aren't we getting the same? Besides the point. So the call to postpone the season for the Big Ten and Pac-12 was the right decision, even if it was not the popular one. That's just my belief. I think that I've always been the side of caution, and I obviously want college football so badly, but I'm also very aware of the implications that go into having college football season and the health risks of everything. And it's very sad that this is the point of our life we're at, and this is what you have to think about. So how the heck will this work? How the heck will this season work? I was thinking about this today, and I was like, dang, I feel like 5 or 6 teams that could contend for the college football playoff this fall are out. And so are we going to have a college football playoff in the fall and in the spring? And will that college football playoff take place between just Pac-12 players and Big Ten players? Teams, not players, excuse me. So is that 2 from each conference then? Is that basically the best 2? How is this going to work? It's going to impact the playoffs, and that means that teams like Ohio State, Penn State, Oregon, USC, Michigan, and more will not be able to compete for the title. So spring college football playoffs, I think that's very reasonable, because you can look at players from the Pac-12 and the Big Ten who say it's not fair that we will not be considered one of the best teams because we opted for the safety of our schools and our team rather than playing. Ohio State is considered one of the best teams in the nation, and they won't get to compete now for the fall, and so this leads the door for Georgia and LSU and maybe an SEC-only conference. Then do we have, SEC-only playoffs and ACC-only playoffs and Big 12-only playoffs, and do we go around that? How does this work? And the draft, this is another huge question we have. So the NFL draft is coming up. It's going to be in the spring of 2021, so if Justin Fields is playing in the spring and he gets drafted in the first round, is he just going to say sayonara to Ohio State? If he's playing for free at Ohio State and he gets drafted by, say, I don't know, the Washington Redskins or another team that needs them, is he just going to say, well, you guys are going to pay me $30 million, but Ohio State's not going to pay me anything? Sayonara, Ohio State. I loved my time here, but I'm out. How's this going to work? Because I think, it's no mystery that players go to the college football with the hopes of playing NFL football. There's no doubt about that. Are these players that are going to have a chance to be drafted in the first or second round in the draft in 2021 just leave their season halfway through? And also, how is scouting going to work for the NFL? Because so often we use the winter and spring seasons to scout these players. We have pro days and combines, and that goes into are many of these players like Justin Fields going to even play college ball in the spring if it ruins their chances at a first or second round overall pick. And if Trevor Lawrence plays in the spring, in the fall, he's gonna have so much more tape than Justin Fields. And you have to consider that. There's going to be tape on the ACC, SEC, and Big 12 players, but not the Pac-12 and the Big 10. So what about the players that opt out? I mean, what about the players, like, again, say Justin Fields opts out. He doesn't decide to play in the spring because he wants to pursue an NFL opportunity. Well, how's that going to work? Is it going to be fair that he basically hasn't played for a whole year and Trevor Lawrence did and contended for a Heisman? So now more than ever, scouting from different teams is going to come into play. We've always known about scouts. I mean, are they going to use TikTok or Instagram videos? Is that how we're going to scout people? Are we just going to send in grainy iPhone footage from, like, old training facilities and be like, look, this is my pro day. Here's what I can throw. Are we even going to have pro days? Are we going to have the combine? I mean, back in the combine in February, COVID-19, like, I think cases had come to the United States, but it wasn't as big of a deal as it was. So we just have to consider all that, I guess. So yeah, that's kind of getting into more subjects we will touch on next week with how the heck how the heck is football going to work this season? If there is even football, if these teams still are contingent on playing. So stay tuned for my top 10 segment I have coming up, because we're going to make it light, we're going to make it airy, we're going to make it a little more fun with the top 10 people to sit next to at a college football game.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
And we are back. We are back for our final segment in a top 10 list. Love a good top 10 list. I know this episode has been far from happy news. It's just been depressing news. It's sad. I saw an Instagram post by ESPN today talking about players that we probably saw in their uniforms for the last time, like Justin Fields. And just so sad. Rashad Bateman of Minnesota just makes me heartbroken. I feel so bad for all these players that are having their season completely ruined, but the safety and health of them is our number one concern. I mean, it's the nation's number one concern. I mean, most of the nation's number one concern. And yeah, so let's keep it a little light today and do a fun top 10 list. Again, I was going to kind of do like an analytical one or more of like a top 10 best plays ever, top 10 best routes to run, top 10 wildest finishes of 2019, but decided to make it a little fun today. Decided to stick with a lighthearted topic, and let's go with the top 10 people to go to a game with / people to sit next to at a game. And as we go through this, we'll kind of be touching on the worst people to go to games with. And so if you're one of these people that I mentioned in the worst people to go to games with, I'm sorry. I mean, no harm, no offense. We've all been there. I'm sure we've all been that annoying person at one point or another at a football game that just doesn't want to be there and that you're not fun to be with. So let's kick it off. At number 10, your significant other who doesn't know much about the sport. This is one of the best people to go with. It's number 10 just because they might ask questions. They might be annoying. I've definitely gone to some football games with people or just like friends in general that don't know much about football. And it's kind of just, it's not annoying, but you spend the whole time being like, that's the first down, that's the second down. But also it's really fun because they get to enjoy the game from such a naive perspective. Obviously, they're rooting for a team. They're probably rooting for your team, but they're not out there being analytical and doing X's and O's and running plays and thinking of how the team can be better. They're going to get angry when an interception is thrown. If a team fumbles, they're going to be happy if you intercept a pass, if you get a touchdown. They're going to be happy with all that. But at the end of the day, they don't really care about the outcome of the game. they're probably just there for fun and to get a beer and have a good time. And that person is just a person I like to be at a football game with. Anyways, on to number 9. Number 9 is someone that I used to be when I was a young kid. This is personally a character figure, I guess you could say I relate to in many aspects. And this is the person who is most excited about the food at the football game. This is me. I am this person. I really relate to this on many levels. Something you guys might not know about me is I have a food blog, a little food Instagram, if you will. It is something I'm passionate about that I started when I was 15 years old. And since then, I've just been a big foodie. Mostly healthy food, I have to say. So I don't know if football games are really like my kind of food. But when I was younger, I'm talking like 8, 9 years old and we'd go to football games, I literally would go because my dad would get heaps and pounds of kettle corn. And it was the best thing ever. I freaking loved it. Excuse me. And yeah, just someone who likes going to the game for the food, really enjoyable, great person to hang out with, usually low-key, laid back. Yes, they really don't know much about football, but they're a good person to go to the games with. Number 8 is the person who likes to sing along to the school chants. This is someone that gets a kick out of football songs. CU, if you're a student there, you kind of know we have this one chant. It goes like fight, 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 fight. Bleep 'em up, go CU. Do with that what you will. You can infer what you will. And so I love when my friends and I go to games. They really don't care about the football, but they just sing the songs and they get so into it. We have these people at our games who are like the banana fans, and they literally just wear banana costumes. They're like famous around our campus. Like getting a picture with the banana people is like legendary. They go to every single game. It's truly iconic, and they just sing the songs and have a great time. It's a really enjoyable experience. Yeah, okay. So, as you can tell, so far, the people that are the most enjoyable to games with, for me personally, are people that don't care about football as much, per se, just because, I don't know, I get really into football games, and so if the person is, like, a casual fan, you know what I mean. Number 7 is the person who gets really into heckling. I don't support heckling in any way. However, if I'm with someone that is doing it, it entertains me. I don't partake in it in any sort of fashion, but it's something I enjoy watching. I think it's funny. Number 6 is the person who tries to learn football as they go. I think it's so great when my friends or someone tries to learn as they go and care about football so much. It makes me very happy to see. But yeah, number 5 is the person who always has extra food with them. This is so important. I get so hungry at all times when it comes to football games and really any big sporting event. I'm a big food person, and honestly, food is just something I care about a lot. And so I need someone that always has food with them, always is down to go get a hot dog with me, go get a snack with me. And yeah, I think someone that brings extra food is always just, they're prepared, they're on top of it. They have their life together. They truly do. Number 4, the person who brings blankets for the night games. This is so crucially important. And I mean, I get cold really easily, but I also get hot really easily. It's kind of a fatal flaw of mine, I guess you could say. But the person who always brings night blankets with them, it's just they have their life together. They really know what they're doing. They know it's going to get hot, and they say, okay, we got to bring blankets. We got to be prepared. I have gotten cold at so many games before, and the best people to go with are the people that bring blankets. Number 3, the person who is a lifelong fan. You know who I'm talking about. The people that live, breathe, eat your school. These are the people that got there in like the 60s or the 70s. They know everything there is to know about the school's football team. They know everything about the players. They live, breathe, eat your school, and it's the best thing ever. You just sit next to them and you feel the school spirit just radiate out of their skin. You know they're serious. They know what they're talking about, and it's just a good time. Number 2 is the person who just wants to have fun. This is the person who, doesn't really care about football, but they're just there for a good time. They're there for the memories. They're there to show up and support. And they just want to have a good time. They don't really care about the outcome of the game. They're not really super invested. I mean, they care who wins to some extent, but they're not like going to have their day ruined if their team doesn't win. And number 1 is the person who just loves college football and their team so much. This is so crucially important. this is just, I mean, I think there's no doubt about it. It's kind of like similar to number 3, but the person who just lives, breathes, eats your team is just such a fun person to go with. You really get the good experience there. It's a great time. I love sitting next to lifelong fans at Colorado games. We had these 2 twins, Betty and Sally, I want to say their names, or one of them recently passed away, which is so sad. But they were like iconic fans, went to every sporting event they could. Such good representation of CU. So those kind of people are truly my favorite people to go with. And we are going to end off a little early today, people, because I have a sore throat and I cannot talk anymore. I'm sorry. But thank you guys so much for listening today and tuning into the GSMC College Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to our show and write a nice review. That really helps us. Also, if you could please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, that would be amazing. Thank you, and have a good night. And thank you so much for tuning in today, listening to me talk. I'm sorry it was a little more of a depressing episode, I guess you could say, but that's okay. And yeah, I will see you guys next time.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts College Football Podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcasts on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type in GSMC to find all of our shows from the GSMC Podcast Network. From football to basketball, baseball to MMA, and even soccer. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's episode of the Golden State Media Concepts College Football Podcast.